Italian military history, from the wars of the Risorgimento to the end of the Second World War, is not made up solely of victories and figures of great prestige. Alongside officers who distinguished themselves on the battlefield, there were also generals who were inept, indecisive, or simply disastrous, and who marked the fate of the military campaigns of the post-unification state. Today, I will tell you about 5 of these men, through glaring mistakes, questionable choices, and ruinous defeats. Rodolfo Graziani was a general and marshal of Italy, a leading and highly controversial figure of the fascist period, the colonial wars, and the Second World War. He joined the army at a very young age and quickly distinguished himself, especially in the colonial campaigns in Africa. He served in Libya and became notorious for the brutality and ruthlessness with which he conducted the repression against the local populations. For his actions, he earned the nickname Butcher of the Pheasant. In 1935, he commanded Italian troops in Somalia during the Ethiopian War, where he resorted to the use of chemical weapons, such as mustard gas, against the Ethiopian army. His rivalry with Badoglio forced the Negus to flee abroad from the Italian stranglehold. With the outbreak of the Second World War, Graziani was appointed commander-in-chief of the Italian forces in North Africa. His military campaign in Egypt in 1940 proved disastrous. Fully aware of the impossibility of mounting an effective offensive in Egypt, he nevertheless failed to oppose Mussolini's orders. He underestimated the mobility and readiness of the British forces and his inability to coordinate an effective defense after the British counterattack led to the rapid defeat of his troops during Operation Compass. After the armistice of 8 September 1943, he chose to remain loyal to Mussolini, becoming Minister of Defense of the Italian Social Republic. He was the only Italian marshal not to swear loyalty to the Kingdom of the South. After the war, he was convicted of collaboration but served only a few years in prison. Ubaldo Soddu, a general of the Royal Army, went down in history more for failures than for successes. After a long career in the General Staff, in November 1940, Mussolini called him to replace Sebastiano Visconti Prasca as commander of operations against Greece. The idea was that Soddu, considered by Mussolini a more experienced commander, could turn the situation around. But things went even worse. Not only did Soddu fail to organize a counteroffensive, he even ordered a general retreat, effectively handing the initiative to the Greeks. Under his leadership, the Italian troops experienced one of the most humiliating phases of the campaign, a terrible winter, with exhausted soldiers and entire units driven back beyond the Albanian border. After barely a month, in December 1940, Soddu too was removed and replaced by Cavallero. His career ended there, marked by his inability to handle such a critical command. Today, his name is remembered as one of the generals symbolizing Italian disorganization in the Second World War, the man who took over a disaster and managed to make it even worse. Alfredo Guzzoni was a little-known general, but the central figure in one of the most disastrous chapters of Italian military history, the defense of Sicily. Born in Parma in 1877, Guzzoni had a long career in the army. He joined very young, fought in the Italo-Turkish War and the First World War, and later served in the General Staff. In 1939, he commanded the Expeditionary Corps in Albania. At the outbreak of hostilities, he took command of the Fourth Army on the Alpine front against France. After the limited results achieved in the Alps, in November 1940, he was appointed Under-Secretary of State for War. By June 1943, he was placed in command of the Sixth Army in Sicily. Guzzoni's army was composed mostly of recalled reservists and was deeply demoralized. The Allied landings in July struck the Italian deployment hard. Allied naval and air superiority devastated the coastal divisions, which, under Guzzoni's orders, had been told to resist to the last. In practice, they managed only to delay the Allied advance by a few hours. In response to the landings, Guzzoni committed his mobile reserves, his best troops, in counterattacks such as those at Licata and Gela, but they failed. Nevertheless, the stiff resistance of these units at Troina and Primosole bought valuable time to evacuate troops from Sicily. In hindsight, he was accused of dispersing his forces along the coast, of delaying the concentration of reserves, and of failing to impose true unity of command with the German ally. But it must also be remembered that he faced overwhelming enemy naval and air superiority. Guzzoni, in fact, did everything within his power to delay the Anglo-American advance, managing to resist in extremely difficult conditions for 37 days. Wojciech Chrzanowski was a Polish general who had a significant, albeit controversial, influence on Italian military history during the Risorgimento. He was born in Warsaw and began his career in the Polish army during the Napoleonic era. After the fall of the French Empire, he served in the Russian army until the Polish uprising of 1830, in which he took part. After the fall of Warsaw to Russian hands, he went into exile in France and later Belgium. In 1849, he arrived in Piedmont at the invitation of Carlo Alberto and was welcomed as a military expert. This choice turned out to be disastrous. Chrzanowski did not know the terrain, had no grip on the troops, and above all underestimated the Austrian army of Radetzky, already hardened by victory the year before. His hesitant and contradictory conduct during the Battle of Novara on the 23rd of March, 1849, led to the collapse of the Sardinian Piedmontese army. The result was devastating. Yet another ruinous defeat, the signing of a humiliating peace with Austria, and the end of the First War of Independence. After that disaster, Chrzanowski almost completely vanished from the military scene. Ugo Cavallero was an Italian general and politician, best known for his role as chief of the General Staff during the Second World War. Born in Casale Monferrato, Cavallero distinguished himself for his intelligence and education, graduating in mathematics and political science. He entered the army and served with honor in the First World War. His career advanced quickly, and he held prominent posts even outside the strictly military sphere. In December 1940, amid the Greek disaster, he was appointed chief of the General Staff, replacing Pietro Badoglio. His task was to salvage a campaign that had begun badly, but his choices were no better. His tenure was also marked by extreme deference to the German command and submission to Hitler's strategies. Critics often describe him as a general more political than strategic, whose priority was to appease German demands rather than defend Italian interests. Under his leadership, the Italian armed forces were deployed in several failed campaigns, such as the unsuccessful counteroffensive in Albania, the operations in North Africa, and the disastrous campaign in Russia. Cavallero was often accused of failing to coordinate Italian forces effectively and of agreeing to catastrophic strategic decisions, such as sending the Italian contingent to Russia, ARMIR, in a state of unpreparedness and with inadequate equipment. Mussolini dismissed him on 31 January 1943, using him as a scapegoat for military disasters. After 25 July, he was arrested by Badoglio, who accused him of plotting against the government. Following the armistice of 8 September, he was freed by the Germans, but his cooperation with them ended abruptly. On 13 September 1943, he was found dead with a gunshot wound to the head. The circumstances of his death were never fully clarified. It may have been suicide or execution at the hands of the Germans.